Yeah, same here. Well, I guess we'll jump in and get started then, or at least just kind of walk through presentation we got for today. So today's topic, getting up to speed quickly, building off of quite a few things from the slow point call, as per usual with a lot of these topics. But yeah, lots of good stuff. Definitely want to go in depth and kind of rehash some of the things we've talked about before and kind of put it all into one cohesive package at the same time. Just since this is such a important topic for a lot of folks when track time is so important, and we want to maximize how quickly we can actually get up to that ultimate pace. So yeah, I kind of like to dissect it into three overall steps. Obviously preparation starts first, first and foremost. And we have some great calls on track prep, for the weekend, getting yourself ready, coming in with goals in mind, and also just analyzing existing data, video, whatever's out there as a resource for you to better understand and digest what exactly we're going to be tackling, out in what that track or car has in store. So, along with that preparation comes also just determining corner priority. If we're thinking about, okay, I want to get up to speed as quickly as possible on a given track, we need to figure out first off, okay, what are the most important corners lap time wise for me to understand and break down there. Once we have that step, it's going to be very big in terms of just, okay, prioritizing what we want to focus on and actually start to build on, as we're learning throughout the weekend. Yeah, obviously familiarity corner references comes with all that preparation, looking at some existing onboards. So certainly lots of things to unpack there. And then the execution side, which we'll talk a good bit on today with some fun examples, actually building speed and actually getting yourself up to that point where we are now at the limit, kind of approaching what that ultimate lap time is fairly quickly, since that's obviously the hardest thing to achieve here. So we'll start with some of the simpler stuff on the preparation side, at least just looking at prioritizing each corner. And these are kind of two questions I want to ask here. So what should my priority be in each corner, and what are the most important corners on a track to focus on? Kind of the two parts here that I like to pose, at least to get started with from a track analysis perspective. So, and yeah, Ken, please jump in.
Yeah,
Jump in here as well.
I mean, this is such an important part of pre-framing,
Hmm.
whether if you're racing, whether it's your track day, whatever it is. Like even on the race weekends when we do
Hmm.
our track walks, is yeah, you want to have a goal or a priority for that
Hmm.
particular corner, whether it's an exit corner, entry corner, doesn't matter, right? They all have like a
Hmm.
individual nuances to them,
Hmm.
but picking a goal or priority for every corner, I think, is massive, right? Because everything
Hmm.
then gets referenced off of that. Oh, I need to get the best drive off of here, or it's such a long radius corner. I need to get I need to move my eyes around, whatever it might be. And I really think that helps keep a person's focus going because they have something to focus to. So just simply track map before the weekend, having a priority for each corner slash goal for every corner. I think, yeah, it's massive. And to the second point, most important corners on the track to
Hmm.
focus on. I mean, yeah, it's easy to say, oh yeah, we want to look, whatever the 3 or 4 corners that lead to
Hmm.
long straightaways, but there's also some corners. For instance, I'm trying to think at Coda. What is it? Is Coda is 4 is the left that goes into the S's.
Yes, think
Yeah,
so. Yeah, that
like
long left.
how being straight for that. If you're not
Mhm.
straight for that, you basically screwed up,
Mhm.
the your opportunity for the that whole S section. So
Exactly. Yep.
so it's easy to say it's easy to say, yeah, the most important straightaways. Yeah, I get it. But there's also corners where you have to look at it. Where am I covering the most? Where am I covering the most feet per second for the longest period of time? And I mean, that is, again, just using code as a great example. That's a great example of, man, you just cannot miss your trajectory going into that corner
Mhm.
because it sets you up for the rest of it. So anyway, I think that poses us a great question.
Yeah, you beat me to it here. I'll skip ahead a few slides because yeah, pretty much yeah, we have our longest straights common as well. But then hey, which
Yeah,
corners directly
exactly.
lead into other important corners, right? And code is the quintessential example because those S's, if you mess up the start, you ruin the next 7 corners in sequence. I mean,
Correct.
almost it's just there's so much that builds on top of that entry to
Yep.
get right. So,
Yep.
and we'll certainly look at some more examples here as well. And yeah, as for the priority in each corner, just entry versus exit, rolling speed versus diving in hard on the brakes, point and shoot. The brake release is a super key component, in terms of prioritizing, how we want to approach our weight transfer along with just building speed, and that's built off of where we put our slow point and if it's an entry or exit speed corner in the first place. So, we'll dive into some of those with some examples without repeating too much other prior info that's out there as well on these calls. But I probably sound like a broken record on some of these at some point, with
Well,
the slow
I mean,
point
that's
stuff.
that. I mean, you know me on this, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
it. I mean, how you do it doesn't matter what you do, how you do it, and
Hmm.
it's just being better at the fundamentals. And it's funny because I just recorded a podcast, which I ended up not liking the recording. I'm going to re-record it tomorrow. But and actually, I'll send you this article, Colin, because you'll really like it. It's
Cool.
an article by Brad Stolberg called "From
Hmm.
the Growth Equation." It's protocols of peak performance, and a lot of it is to your point, right? Everybody focuses on the 0.01% but forgets about the
Hmm.
99.9%, and it's the 99.9% that leads you to
Hmm.
the point oh you know to the
Yep.
0.1%.
Yep.
So yeah, these, I mean, what it boils down to is someone got a better exit than you did. Yeah, what it boils down to is somebody got a better entry than you did. So yeah, it's focusing your attention on the right things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's some fun stuff we'll dive into looking at some of these examples on this call too as well. And by the way, welcome in Ollie. I know light attendance tonight. I think we had some email issues with the link, so good to see some more people trickling in here. But yeah, why don't we kind of at least just break down. We'll use VIR, and I have a Thunder Hill as an example here, since I have some data to go along with VIR. But again, starting with basics, right? And Ken, as you mentioned, starting with those corners that lead onto long straightaways. Right? It's straightforward enough, but obviously we have some long runs in terms of even just racing. Where those passing zones are going to be at this track. We want to get a good run out of Oak Tree. We want to get a good run out of Hog Pen. Turn 17 with these long runs. Down here and for lap time as well. Nailing turn 5, getting up the S's is another obviously long run. But we have some corners that obviously lead into this, right? We have turn 4 is super crucial. If you mess up turn 4 and get yourself out of sorts into 5, into the super long right hander, then that ruins your run, into the S's. We got to get turn 4 right. Over the top of the hill. If we mess up turn 9, a lot of higher horsepower stuff you have to get right to get into turn 10, get your approach into there as well. So we have a lot of these corners that build onto each other. Nothing as extreme as Coda, obviously, but if I want to be
Yeah,
putting my effort
yeah,
towards
the turn in for 7 though. Oh my gosh, the turn in for
yes.
the S's is just same thing, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you're in too low, and now
Hmm.
basically, yeah,
Hmm.
you've essentially ruined your timing through the whole section.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, certainly lots of these corners we want to get right, and for VAR, we have a decent amount of higher risk stuff too in terms of where if we're starting to push, would you start running into trouble? Oak Tree, very easy to get out of sorts there, and if I'd probably be able to afford to put myself back on a track with my own race team if I had $1 for every time a pro driver went off an Oak Tree and put it in the tire barrier up there. So definitely a lot of areas to be aware of and break down from there. But we'll look at some data a bit further into the call about how we actually build that speed and kind of what are the best areas to take those risks on a track like VIR in particular, but also obviously just for wherever else you go. Yeah, and again, in terms of priority, we have some great calls and resources about separating entry and exit speed priority corners. But even just from a top-down view, I'm looking at how much time am I spending on the exit of a corner versus the entry. Do I have a long run, coming out of that turn that I want to get right? So something like, horseshoe turn 1. We have a pretty decent little run into 3 here. Would say that's a bit more of a, exit corner, even though it's not the longest run on the track. We still want to prioritize that run coming out of here. Something like turn 4, a bit more entry priority, but we want to get our setup for turn 5, very properly correct as well, right through there. So again, kind of managing and balancing those different thoughts. And we'll look at some data on the track in
Yeah,
more
hey, can
detail.
we let's pause here for a
Yeah,
quick second, Colin, because
sure thing.
I think it's when you're trying to get up to speed correct,
Hmm.
quickly, right? And you're trying to build this, and you've got your examples here are spot on. So it's like, where do I want to put my brain space and where do I want to put
Hmm.
my energy? And it's, for instance, if you get your trajectory out of I'm just going to use this one because it's an easy one. If I get my trajectory out of 4
Hmm.
correct, it allows me to get my turn in for 5 correct.
Hmm.
So like I don't have to worry about my exit of 5 or 6. It's going to take care of itself. But if I put all of my brain space on being precise there,
Hmm.
then I'm good. For
Hmm.
instance, and then same thing, like whatever, 16, 17, right? As you
Hmm.
not rushing, I guess you would call it 16B, right? Making sure
Hmm.
you get in there, but getting your turn in correct for
Hmm.
17 as an example. It's like there's places where you need to be really precise,
Hmm.
and then the rest of that section it will just take care of itself. And so I think it's when we look at the prioritizing corners and we look at having goals for corners,
Hmm.
it's thinking about, okay, if I get this section correct,
Hmm.
then I know that the rest of this is going to be okay, and I can actually afford less brain space, right? I mean, the bottom line is you can be a little bit sloppy. I mean, you don't have a lot of room, but you can be a little bit sloppy on the exit of 6, for example. I
Hmm.
mean, you've got enough there to gather up where you don't have to have a lot of brain space, but
Hmm.
you got to have your brain space correct in that 4 to 5 section. So I think that's why it's really important
Hmm.
to have those, again, writing out your priorities or writing out your goals initially, because
Hmm.
they shortcut this crap.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I definitely we'll dive into some good stuff here too, and I even have some at least just on board from Mike skiing that we'll look at in terms of just basing some of those key references like you mentioned coming up here, yeah, in just a sec too. So absolutely, lots of all really good stuff. Yeah, across the lap, and I always like to have like one or two key references per corner that will be my just identifications. If I can get to that point, I know I'm set. I know I'm in good
Yeah.
shape, as
Yeah.
opposed to looking for five things every single lap, when it's becoming repetitive and I'm building up that muscle memory. So, yeah, awesome stuff. Same thing, even quickly for Thunder Hill, right? Looking for those prioritized sections, starting with those long runs in the straightaways. We got to get 15 right. As you mentioned, Ken, with a similar example in VIR, you get your entry to 14 right, and you get set up in the right place for 15. 15 is pretty much set and done for at Thunder
Yeah.
Hill, as long as we can get out of 14 correctly. So, everything starts and builds off of the entry here to help get us to that point where we want that good strong exit onto the front straightaway
Yeah, you get I
in
mean, the
14.
bottom line, yeah, you get your turn in for 14,
Hmm.
you're automatically going to get your exit, and then
Hmm.
you're set for 15.
Yep, exactly, 100%. And yeah, I mean, even places like six, like six here. We're coming down the hill. If we're running the bypass, it can be a bit tricky to keep the car pinned to the right hand side. But if we can get our entry set up well, that gets us a nice long run down, all the way through, turn 8 up to 9. All that momentum's carrying uphill. So certainly super
Yeah,
crucial
feet
to
per,
that.
yeah, you're covering more. It's where you're covering more feet per
Hmm.
second for a period of time. So
Hmm.
if you can think about, okay, where do I need to be precise so I can cover more feet per second for the longest period of time?
Hmm. Yep, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, even just having that understanding will at least give you the priority to focus on and kind of build, when we're getting up to speed over those first few laps out on track. So, yeah, I think it's all awesome stuff here. We'll keep rolling. At least just brief notes on preparation, and I'll jump into some video. At least making some of those notes at VIR and kind of the things that I'll take into account when I jump into driving out on track there. But obviously, what to study: onboard video, data, race footage, whatever you can get your hands on from the actual track there is fantastic. Only thing, just to note, make sure you're getting some good onboard video of what the pros are doing, or some good drivers. We have a lot of onboard videos over on the Blayze site under the blog section, just kind of our go-to, helping find some footage from across all the different popular tracks across the country. If there's anything specific you're looking for, you can always let one of us know, and we'll get you pointed in the right place. Data side, obviously, if we have some good data to look at, it's a bit more rare to come by, but can definitely be helpful in terms of just looking for how we're approaching brake zones, where we how are we getting in some of these corners. But you're only going to be as good as the reference that you're looking at. So again, also matters to take that into consideration. And sim racing certainly a large help in terms of getting the right mentality when approaching, driving a new track. Can definitely help practice just the fundamentals in terms of our brake release, our brake application, where we're getting on throttle, and also good to work through some drills and kind of better familiarize yourself there as well. And actually, some of the data we'll be looking at today was me hopping on my rusty sim racing driving, hopping back on iRacing at VIR for some laps, just because it is same transferable stuff, right? We're just doing the same inputs, getting a slightly different feel or feedback, but the outcome is going to be pretty similar to what we'd see out in person too. So obviously, if we're looking at some video and data, and maybe it's a different car, or a different car class, altogether, our slow point's going to stay the same, as Ken mentioned. I'm sure in the last call a bunch. Super super important for just framing how we approach the track and how we approach our brake zone. Obviously, being on throttle early is not ideal for us rolling speed into the corner and building up our entries, which is super super crucial at the top end of the sport. It's going to be upsetting our car balance, kind of taking away from some of those fundamentals. So we definitely want to be making sure we're hitting that same slow point across the lap. Car positioning going to be the same. Minor nuances may change, but the way you drive a track is going to be very similar from car to car to car. Whoops. And then braking references, our initial brake applications will change where we're applying the brakes. The brake release will likely be pretty similar. Again, just depending on car balance and the last 1% of what we're feeling, but how we approach a brake zone in terms of if it's a longer release, if it's a short, light brush on the pedal, if it's a little bit slower application, and kind of breathe off the brake. All those things will be very similar car to car to car. And our throttle application amount changes. So how quickly can we get to full power out of a corner will be different, depending on the vehicle. Obviously, a big old Trans Am car with 900 horsepower is going to get to power differently from a Miata, but the point at which we start applying the throttle will be the same between those. So, and Ken, would love to have you jump in here as
Yeah,
well.
let's linger here for a bit. I think this is one of the most crucial aspects of motorsports. That's probably one of the most misunderstood.
Mhm.
Um, and it once you can get a grasp over this, it really does make your life a lot easier. And again, having things based off the slow point and understanding, yeah, there's the difference between, say, a Miata, whatever, a Miata and a GT car. I mean, you exit corners still going to have an
Mhm.
early slow point. Exit corners have a
Mhm.
late slow point, and the point is it's a lot closer than you think. There may
Mhm.
be, again, to your point, nuanced with grip or whatever it is, but it's very close. And so this is one of those things. Same thing with when you've got here car placement, right? Is about the same. Braking references change. Yeah, where
Mhm.
you apply the brake has to change. Where you release the brake, of course, that goes reconciles with slow point is relatively the same. Obviously, the throttle changes, but embracing this, trying to get up to speed early and embracing this, holy crap, does it shortcut things. I mean, Aaron, can I pick on you for a minute, Aaron?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, you're riding a 400 and you're riding you've got your Tuono 1000 big fast bike, you got your 765, another big, fast motorcycle.
Hmm.
And I think, as you've gone through this process, understanding this, one of the things that you've been able to do very, very well is jump between bike to bike. And I'm assuming, so you can, obviously you can talk about it, but how do these play into when you jump from bike to bike to bike?
Oh yeah. Yeah, a slow point should be virtually identical. I mean, I do find in my own data, I find some nuances, but it's not enough to really even concern myself with. But that's my goal. I mean, I want my brake release and initial throttle to be right at the same point, regardless of what I'm riding. One bike has a little bit more abrupt initial throttle input, and that's the big bike. So my initial drive off of that is a little bit different, but yeah, as far as when the controls happen, it's all the same. It should be all the same.
So, and I think that's, in knowing you and knowing your riding, I think that that's one of the biggest things for you is being able to jump from bike to bike to bike and use these as sort of your central points of reference for, hey, I'm going to go ride with this guy. I'm going to jump in this group and ride the small bike. Oh, okay, cool. Now I'm going to go back and ride my own bike for myself. And, you don't have to rethink these things.
No, it
So,
makes it pretty easy.
so, the topic of getting up to speed quicker, yeah, I mean, you're trying to get up to speed basically in four corners or five corners when you jump from vehicle different sizes, and this is what allows you to do that.
Yeah, no, I rode a different bike up at the Ridge. That one was super soft, and I had never ridden one before, so that one took me a couple laps to kind of figure it out a little bit. But before the end of the session, I was in B group and I was running an A group pace, so that was fine.
Yeah. But yeah, the bottom line is this is a great example of it,
Mhm.
of being able to execute those things. I mean, if you didn't have that, if it's like, oh God, okay, I got to get to my 1,000 now. I got to relearn everything. And it's like, well, actually, no, you just use these same references.
Yeah, we don't believe in the Corvette line over here.
Dude,
There's
I
a racing
just,
line.
yeah. Ah,
Oh, but yeah, obviously, yeah, like you said, get stuff is thrown around a lot. Highly encourage anyone, if you're curious for some good examples, even, look at like, Mike Skeen's YouTube channel just for all the stuff he's driven. He's got a ton of onboards from, the same track, variety of different cars, even, my page, just Colin Mullan. Since we're on the topic of VIR, have, Honda Civic TCR on board and LMP3, Norma on board. And virtually identical.
dude, it's
Again,
great.
the
Yeah.
nuances. There's
Yeah.
there's tiny stuff, right? Like the Civic has a giant turbo that's got a spool up, so my application on throttle is a bit earlier, but that's because the torque is taking a bit longer to actually get there and see the power kick in versus the naturally aspirated V8, in the big old prototype. But those are like the tiny little nuances you notice. Everything else, how I'm approaching all the corners is virtually identical, like you said. So, the first time I hopped in the P3 car, I've never driven a prototype before, was very much okay, taking what I've learned from all the GT stuff, touring cars, and applying it there. And hey, you know what? We're on pace in the first day, or first couple sessions on track there. And so yeah, it definitely is definitely those fundamentals transfer, which is awesome. So when we are actually analyzing and looking at some of those onboards that are out there, looking for overall vehicle placement, getting our lines right first and foremost, squared away, right? We got to be positioning our car in the right spot. Where's that driver getting on throttle? Looking for some from some peripheral references, just for ourselves, the sake of consistency and building up those, our reference bank just before we get there, and then understanding brake technique, right, as we're releasing the brake pedal. What do those type of corners need for these different tracks? So I do want to again mention some of this stuff already, so I do want to jump on over to YouTube here, and we can take a look at Mike Skeen's onboard from VIR. So we'll go ahead and at least just look at a couple corners here. Don't need to walk through the whole lap, but at least just getting the gist of some of the things you're gonna be looking out for typically, right? So we're getting in. We have our brake markers on the left-hand side, all well and good. Maybe I'm driving something that's way higher horsepower, way lower, so that braking reference will change. Our turning point, we can look at exactly where Mike's starting to get the car turned in here and squared away. Kind of just in between the one and the arrow board, and then the throttle application. Super key, just right on the back side of that inside curb. So pretty much as soon as he's getting around the inside apex curb that's here in turn one, we're starting to see him get on power. We have a nice little G plot here on the dash on the far right, so we can even just look for where that little dot starts to move downward into the downward section for some good old longitudinal acceleration. But yeah, even just making note of that. Okay, backside of the inside curb in turn one. Now I have a good reference where I want to be getting on power. That'll help me frame the rest of my lap and my driving in turn one. So keep moving on down. Same thing in turn three. We can see here, so pretty decent initial brake application, starting pretty wide, turning in at the outside of the end of the outside curb on the right hand side, and getting on power just before the apex of the inside curb here. So again, just putting in my mind, okay, just before the central apex of the turn three curb, where we want to be getting on power, rolling on the speed, using all the extra road on the exit, that we have available over that outside curb too. So just in those two corners, now I have some at least just basic framework, right? And Ken, like you were saying, building up just the general reference. Hey, if I can get this corner right or get this one thing right, I'm aiming for that one part of the curb where I'm getting on power. If I can hit that point, the rest of the corner is going to follow and help build up from there. Same thing, turn four, real quick. As long as we can get our turn four entry correct and get a nice straight shot into five, now that helps us set up five, brilliantly, right? And then we're just kind of managing our throttle
just
through the
his
exit.
patience right there, knowing,
Yes.
it's like just how his position there,
Mhm.
and how patient he is as he builds. So he builds through that entire section. It's freaking awesome.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, and we can see the same thing, just pulling out a six, nice and easy from there, as long as we get that, exit out of four right. So again, it doesn't have to be anything too complicated, right? Just take down a couple of those initial notes. If we want to jump over and draw this on a track map too, right? I can just make some quick lines, here and there based on where I'm thinking. Okay, at least just let me make this my starting point for a reference for where I want to be. Sorry, blue's probably not the easiest color to see on the satellite images, but that's our goal, right? Where we want to be positioning and putting our throttle application points here. But it's such a huge help in terms of building up that speed, and we'll see in some data shortly as well. So jumping back on over to the some PowerPoint here. So yeah, we went through some just very quick exercise, right? But again, showing doesn't have to be super complicated. Just looking for some of those identifying markers. And yeah, now it takes us into the fun stuff, actually getting out there and doing it on track. But I'll let you jump in first, Ken.
Yeah. So this actually brings up a really good point that I've I've had to deal with a lot this year,
Hmm.
which is it is really easy to, as somebody that's training or somebody that's coaching, it's really easy to overcoach. It's
Hmm.
really easy to provide too much information. And so this this really helps simplify, again, singular goals, or a singular goal for the entry, singular goal for the exit, whatever it might be, instead of like okay, downshift here, the third crack, you only want to use 20 degrees of steering wheel
Hmm.
angle. It's you're not going to get that.
Hmm.
So having a big singular reference where everything kind of is, follows underneath that. So if you can accomplish that singular reference,
Hmm.
you have no choice but to actually do a bunch of those things.
Hmm.
So it from for somebody that's training somebody, or instructing somebody, it's so easy to overcoach. It's so easy. And this makes it actually quite a bit simpler, to your point, right? It's like you don't, okay, I can see where Mike's getting on the throttle. I can see where he's getting on the brakes. I can see he's turning in. Okay, cool. I'm good. I don't need to go, well, how much throttle is he using, or how much brake is he using? That's yeah, it's for him, that grip level for that day. Instead, we want to look at some of these bigger things that get us to that goal.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's my approach when I hop out on track too, right? I'm not looking for a thousand different things, on track, and part of that's once we build up, that feeling, kind of know what to aim for, know what that one key thing is that we know if I can get to that one point on track, now everything else follows, like you
Yep.
said. That's part of the
Yep.
process in building. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's all great stuff, and yeah, it's by far the best way to build up that pace. So when it comes down to actually putting that into practice, and going from there, this is kind of my general process, right, in terms of how I'm building speed on track once we have that goal in mind. So it's just starting with our fixed slow point, starting with our throttle application across the track. If I have that right, now I want to build up speed and execute from there. So I'm going to start out with getting on throttle at the right point on track. I'm going to feel out my grip level on power. So I know we talked about this in some of the lower grip driving calls as well, and kind of dealing with some, if general heat, we're kind of adapting in the conditions thereof. But feeling out the power on corner exit, seeing do I have traction, on my tires, how well is the car turning? Is it actually taking a set and getting us to a good point on exit, or is it still, hey, pretty cold? Still need to give it some time. The track is still getting warmed up, in the day. Still pretty green, maybe first session out there as you're still learning stuff. So still, certainly lots of things to consider and kind of feel out there. But once we have some confidence building, feeling out our steering, how much is too much, if we're actually passing that point of no return on the steering wheel where it's just not really doing anything for us. Or if we just keep turning the wheel, does the car keep, giving us some grip? There's that slip angle keep building, and we keep getting some more front grip as a result. I've seen a couple times recently, and some people I've been coaching and working with, they're saying, yeah, I was trying out some different things, late in the weekend, found some more pace, here, and was trying like a dab of the brakes instead of a longer coast, or just as an example. But then I looked back at the video and see, well, you actually were just using, instead of 60 degrees of steering, your wheel was at 90 because you were going faster and had to turn more, and the car went and turned more. So part of that process is seeing, hey, do we actually have the grip to deal with that? So a couple things I'll Mentioned there with some examples. And then the last, absolute last thing I'll be looking at is braking deeper. I'm never going to chase my brake zones first and foremost out on track. That's like the last thing I will be doing, because once you get too deep into a corner, once you pass your entry, in terms of we get in a little bit too hot, there is no point of return. If you get on power a little too soon or a little bit too aggressively out of a corner, you can back out and it's all good. We can back out of the throttle if we need to make a quick change, but you can't exactly brake harder and get yourself in a better spot most of the time. So that's certainly going to be the last item on my priority list. But as we'll see here with some data, there's a great way to go about it that at least just gets us into a safer spot, and building up progressively over time to find where that limit actually is. Yeah. As for just kind of talking about testing some of those grip levels in a bit more detail. I always like to prioritize the lower risk, lower speed corners to actually feel that stuff out, right? So VIR, I'm not going to go do that in turn 9 or at the top of the hill and feel, if I turn more, does the car actually have some more grip up at the top here? We're going to figure that out first in some of the lower speed stuff, or at least areas where I have some runoff and ability to make mistakes without the big old consequences too. So certainly some areas where I can try to work on some of those things. Real quick, I do see Ollie in chat here. I'm racing Laguna Seca in 2.5 weeks. I think I can get another second there by cleaning up my driving. I'll have a Friday practice and racing Saturday and Sunday. I have a lot of Blayze credits. What Blayze support program do you suggest for those 3 days for me to get that done? Well, yeah, certainly, Ollie. We can do any combination of same day stuff if you want, record it, or even hopping on a live call after your day on Friday and Saturday. I've always felt have been pretty beneficial in terms of just talking through the day, what you were doing, and a one-on-one chat, even like we're on here for the webinar, can all be really good. So yeah,
Ollie,
definitely.
Ollie, do you have data? I mean, Colin, are you available to work with him?
This weekend I should be able to, yeah. So
Well, I mean,
100%.
yeah. I mean, if you have reference data
Oh,
and
2.5 weeks,
and
yeah.
he's got data, I mean, that would just, if he could send you data, that would just
Yeah.
be.
Yeah,
it-
I've got qualifying and race video from a weekend about a month ago
Hmm.
or so that I got from there that I could share.
Gotcha. Yeah, even doing some pre-weekend prep would be awesome. And yeah, obviously weekend of. I think I've done some awesome live calls and one-on-ones with people during their race weekends, at least just after Friday practice, and kind of reviewing, hey, how did the goals go kind of coming into the weekend? How'd you feel today? And looking at some data and video from the day of is always super helpful too.
I
So
those Sentinel ones in my car that'll broadcast out over cell. So I mean, you could literally be driving in the car with me and talking to me through my AirPods or something.
interesting. Yeah, we'll see. I wonder how that would work. Out across the country. I'd be curious to test it. I don't know if you wanna pull a full guinea pig for that stuff, but hey, I'd be willing to give it a try if I'm around. But yeah, certainly some pre-race weekend stuff. Obviously, I know Laguna pretty well, so we can definitely do some analysis beforehand, and I would definitely suggest Friday evening, just hopping on a call and
Yeah.
reviewing some video and data too.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie, if Colin's available, grab him. It's that simple.
For sure. But yeah, we can chat offline too, Ollie, and figure some stuff out. But yeah, would
Cool.
definitely love to help out for that weekend.
Excellent.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah. Continuing on from the for the low grip stuff. Just pick the first section of VIR here. Turns 1 through 5. Just because we do have some room to work with. Obviously, if it's wet, turn 3 becomes a little bit more risky, since that runoff carries you to the tires a bit more aggressively. But these are some areas where we're at a bit lower speed. We have some room to collect ourselves if we do get things a little bit out of sorts. Especially turn 4, right? If you mess up turn 4, you push in a little bit too hard, brake too deep. What are you going to do? Just slow down more into 5. That's our solution, right? So sure you'll get a worse run, but that's what practice is for, to kind of figure out, okay, what does the car have in terms of its limits of grip? How is the braking characteristics into 1? You can take that same thought process and apply it down into the back straightaway. So all these things that we can learn in a few sections, we can transfer that feeling and apply it to other places on track as well. But certainly, picking some of the easier stuff to collect ourselves in my opinion, will be the best way to just manage our speed, manage our pace. But Ken, would love to hear you jump in here as well, since I know
Yeah.
it's
No,
definitely.
I mean, it's again, This is like literally the same talk that we did for like at the rain, because
Yep.
because it's like, I want to teach you how to ride in the rain, or it's like, well, I am. This is how you do it. So, yeah, I mean, I think part of this, of getting up to speed is, you know, trying to how much time are you taking to try to accomplish this? I mean, you and I,
Mhm.
we're trying to accomplish this in the first 6 corners, right? First seven,
Mhm.
right? Whatever, right? We want to know by the time we get going on our first, essentially flying lap, we don't want to waste time because there is no time. So we want to be able to know, oh yeah, wow, the track is very cold right now.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. I'll maximize more straight up and down braking. I'll be slower at my slow point. Or, oh, we've got some grip. Okay, we got some grip, then let's get after it. So the sooner we have that information built, the sooner that we can, start to execute our plan. So
Mhm.
yeah, all the things that you talked about, we're just trying to do in less time.
Mhm.
So yeah, we can maximize our lapping.
Yeah, 100%. Other couple places I'll, mention, carousels, long constant radii, where we're just holding, some throttle in, kind of keeping it almost in a maintenance phase, right? So something like the carousel at Road America, Willow Springs, turn two, the big old sweeper there. There's a lot of corners, even Watkins Glen, where, I'm at pretty high speed, but I'll still be kind of playing with the wheel, adding a little bit more steering to see, okay, does this actually get me some more grip? How's the front end feeling? And because it's such a constant, turn, I'm making very minor adjustments just to get that feedback from on the wheel and see, does this actually benefit me in terms of grip, or does is that little bit of extra movement on the wheel not giving me any feedback, not giving me any extra feeling? Okay, I kind of can feel out where those front tires are starting to come in, or not in some cases. So just some other things to consider, and other fun stuff to take a peek at. So well, yeah, now down into the fun stuff, looking at lines and fancy graphs. Um, but I do have some data from iRacing on VIR. Mentioned I was, I'm a little rusty hopping back on the sim, so this was a good excuse for me to pound some laps to kind of see if I could get close to some of the quick times in the at least just Ferrari GT3 at VIR here. And we'll look at Motec in some more detail, but this is entry into turn one. 4 different laps. I think the white one here was my first lap out on track, at least first lap coming by, and everything else is, just kind of in sequence, later in the session up through just, 8 laps or so on track here. So, but what we can see is that throttle application point really similar, right? If there's any, minor adjustments, these are all very close together. That slow point is, pretty much dead on where we see all these V's lining up. And then the entry, we can see progressively braking with some more pressure, pushing the brake zone deeper. But as we start to build over the course of the session, these gaps, and these jumps that I'm taking, since once I have my fundamentals down for car placement, slow point, or throttle application, all that stuff is good, squared away. Now we're taking some larger chunks out on the entry, but you can see these gaps become smaller and smaller and smaller as I start to feel myself approaching that limit, right? So these are some other things I want to mention, take a look at, but let's dive on over to the
Can we,
um,
let's pause there for a quick second, Colin,
yes,
is I
I'll
can't,
hop on over to the actual actual graphs for you too,
yeah,
so we can zoom in and zoom
I
out on.
can't emphasize how important using essentially your apex, or using your brake
Mhm.
release, or using that slow point as your central point of reference
Mhm.
allows you, and basically allows you to do that, right? Enables
Mhm.
you to be able to do that. So even though you can see there's, if you look at where you apply the brakes, I mean, there's, hundreds of feet
Mhm.
probably in between all of those, but on every one of those, where you release the brake is
Mhm.
probably within 10 or 15 or 20 feet. And yeah, I mean, your first one, of course, you're going slow, right? You're trying to
Mhm.
build your speed up.
Yep.
So yeah, the throttle's a little bit early because,
Mhm.
you release the brake a little bit, but they're all very, very similar,
Mhm.
and they're not that far apart. And to your point, the GPS speed graph is also very, very close.
Mhm.
So using that, when I see people missing apexes, it's because they don't have a thought of their central point is not on where they should be placed, right? Their thoughts are somewhere else. And it's really, really difficult, very, very difficult to continue to build speed after that. So even though, again, here he's got a big variation of where he's applying the brakes, where he's releasing the brakes, where his slow point is, and as his real lap started, where he's applying the throttle is very, very close. And that
Mhm.
again goes back to because that's a central point of reference for being on track.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to show here, even just over the whole lap, right? I mean, we see, obviously 4 different laps here. I think these were, yeah, laps 1, 2, and 3 versus lap 8, right? When we got down to some better pace there on the end. Um, Pretty much all these slow points, even on the out lap here, once I got going out of the pits and, out into turn 1, we get to a place like turn 4 or turn 5 here coming onto the back straight. And yeah, look at the throttle application is still very similar outside of the blue lap where I got on a bit too early, and you can see me make that correction on the exit, right? So all these things and kind of figuring out, okay, this was a bit too aggressive. I was trying to get on too early here, and now had to correct it and kind of get back in line with where those fast laps ended up being with the pink trace here being the ultimate lap time. That central reference point is so important, and you can see when you get it even just a little bit early, a little bit wrong, how I paid the price on the exit and had a much bigger lift and much bigger time off throttle here to correct that mistake essentially. Same thing, we can go jump on over to corners like Oak Tree, dive in here, zoom in, see same thing. Throttle application is pretty much all in the same spot outside of just a little burst of speed right in the middle portion of the corner. Brake release is all a bit messy. Again, I'm a bit rusty getting back into the swing of things here on the sim. But like you said, Ken, that's super important for me in terms of framing how I want to approach the corner.
So
When I'm looking at someone like Mike's reference on board, or looking at some existing reference out there, that's going to be another thing I'll be paying attention to. Okay, is this corner obviously it's a bit lower speed, bit longer entry phase. We want to carry speed through that first long left up into Oak Tree. Well, I still want to have some extra front grip if the car is understeering a good bit to get me around that last little bit to slow the car down. So I'm going to be keeping that brake on to manage that feeling. Other places like turn 9 top of the hill, if we go back here and I think there was some traffic on this blue lap with some lighter braking, so we'll go ahead and swap that out for maybe even another one. Yeah, same thing, just super light, short braking application. I'm not trying to trail in a lot here coming down the hill. It's a very high speed corner. That stability matters to me. So my release here is going to be pretty short, but that goes in line with my goals for the turn itself, right? We're getting off the brake pretty soon there. And just focusing on rolling some more speed on the entry as opposed to trailing in down to where that slow point throttle application is. And again, even here you can see a bit of variance as I'm trying out some different things, or at least on the first lap, a bit slower versus some other laps was a bit too soon, and I'm making those adjustments based on some extra feedback I'm getting, right. I'm going to use this time and use these first laps to experiment, try stuff like I did over in turn 4. And that feedback's going to play into, okay, was that too early, too late, and help me dial in where that correct slow point I want to be is, along with some of the stuff we did ahead of time, looking at some references and some feedback there. But yeah, certainly even just the progression over the laps here just kind of shows that process, and I think helps illustrate well over the course of a longer run. So can you look like you're thinking something there?
no, this is great. I mean, here, so again, when I wish we would have a bigger buy-in on this type of thinking, and the reason being is because Oak Tree is a great example. I think first of all, Oak Tree is a very difficult corner to get right, especially as your pace comes up, right? So how you approach it, how you initially go to the brakes, and how you release them, how you carry speed in, because it's such a long way of trying to carry speed in. So yeah, you've got a little bit of variance there, but what doesn't change is where your slow point is and where you're going to the throttle. Now, yeah, your slow point might be a little bit longer in a couple of those laps because you're feeling it out, but your point of reference of the slow point, your point of reference of your apex, your point of reference of where you're throttling literally does not change. So that to me, yeah, that is a really big point. And that's the point I wish people would embrace more, is understanding why apexes are important, because control usage, trajectory, all those different things, but it allows you to keep building speed. And then it allowed you to manipulate your brake graph and your end of braking to shorten the amount of time that it took for you to get there. So yeah, I do chomp at the bit at these, because this would, again, this type of thinking is where real improvement comes from.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I don't want to say look how easy it is to, if we just have that single reference point, but even just on the entry, I'm able to get a really good idea of how much speed I can carry in here because I'm keeping that one single point
Yeah,
the
and
same,
this had your
right?
outlap in it too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
this one has the
that's
yes,
really good.
outlaps in here
Yeah,
too, in
that's
the wet
very,
lap.
very good. Yeah.
Yep, yep, for sure. So, again, and I think the blue lap here was a lap where I didn't, carry enough pressure in through the center, and you can see that speeds up by quite a bit. But I keep this, same reference point, this, obviously equal across the laps of where I'm getting
Yep.
on power. So, I can recognize, okay, well, I had to get the car slowed down. I missed my apex a little bit on this blue lap, right? We can kind of see that min speed drop a little bit lower, here down below. And the next lap, okay, well I recognize, okay, I got a little bit in too hot. I'm going to increase my pressure and get back to that same reference point because that's my one target. If I can hit that single point, hit my apex and oak tree, get on throttle at the right time, everything else comes with it, right? So
Exactly it.
100%. And yeah, even just some other, fun little quick examples, but braking technique into, the last couple turns in the back straight, even outlap, same thing, and I'm having my hard initial hit, light breathe off as we start to turn left, back on the pressure, just all these same things, I'm still working to apply because I know, hey, this is the technique I'm going to use in this corner. The degree of application will change, on the blue trace, I'm carrying in a bit more pressure. On the white one, the outlap, I'm pretty a little earlier, a little bit less pressure than the others, still feeling out the grip, but even coming back here, throttle application point, look at that, very similar again, just fine tuning the last little 1% of where I want to perfect it, and based on, how my positioning is on track as a result of all those things too. So, again, all the last little 1% comes in this tiny little variation, but if we can get all of our laps in this single spread of ranges. I mean, even let's look at a couple laps here just in sequence. I'll get rid of some of the other data, but just how close these are, and looking at the variance from braking to the exit. Well, this one we have a little bit of a lift on exit, so probably not going to be the best. But even just from this blue trace, right? Where we get in on the corner entry versus the exit, it's a tenth of a second that we're chasing, which still obviously adds up over the course of this whole lap. But that tiny little variation, carrying the brakes a little bit longer and getting a little bit wider in the apex. This is a pretty big speed differential, and it's only a tenth of a second, in the grand scheme of things. So if we're still chasing, a second or two, across the lap, or trying to find some of the bigger chunks, we get that variation down to a smaller area, and even with some pretty big differences in pressure and initial brake applications here, the outcome is still not the biggest in the world. So in terms of differentials, but there was one more thing I wanted to touch on, at least just on the presentation side, and we'll kind of correlate that back to some data. But it's making mistakes. Like we touched on it in turn 4 a little bit briefly, but my first laps out on track, and even on the data here, as if you look at the lap times, the sequence of them is not perfect. I'm still taking chunks at a time, lap after lap, but if I want to find the limits of the car and find the limits of the boundaries, it's okay to push past that a little bit. And what I mean by that is not saying, hey, I'm going to brake super deep, get off in the grass and run super wide, or I'm going to spin the thing out and that's going to be my way of figuring out what the car is doing. No, we're taking small enough bites. If I miss my apex by a foot or two in my first laps learning a track or learning a new environment in a practice session, that's not the end of the world. That's just me figuring out, okay, I need to dial things back a little bit. And as long as we take that information in and process it, make a change, that's what we're looking for, right? Again, mistakes are only mistakes if we just let them linger, right? If we don't do anything to change what we're driving and adjusting out on track. But you can see a great case here on the blue lap, which happened before the pink, of me braking in super deep, just missing my initial brake marker, trying to carry a ton of speed into turn 4, and then realizing, okay, well, I missed my entry for 5 by a country mile, and now I want to back things up. But I never put a wheel off, I never spun the thing, I just missed my apex in turn 4 by a little bit, right? So these are some small things that we're doing, but it's okay to push past that boundary of what the car is is going to get to. And if we just run a little bit wide, get a little bit too deep into a corner, hey, we just back things up to adjust, right? As long as we're taking information and making a change. That's what I'm looking for here. So Ollie here says a cool integration Blayze should explore with Garmin or with AIM and or Garmin is automatic upload of data to the coach on a contracted support weekend. These units are Wi-Fi enabled. Coming back into the paddock would be a perfect jump out of the car after a practice or qualifying session for immediate feedback. Yeah, I can definitely pass along to Dion and the team there as far as getting some of that stuff.
It's just time and money.
I know it's all time, money, and yeah, making those connections. But yeah, that'd be pretty nifty as far as ease of all this stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of my final little ending point, at least just for the presentation stuff. We could certainly dive into some more data if we wanted to look at anything in a bit more detail. But just saying, hey, I'm not trying to be perfect on all these laps. My goal is to learn things, in my first session out on track, and then take them to finally piece that perfect lap together. If I'm driving to figure out what a car needs from a setup perspective too, I'm going to push, just past the boundary of grip that I know is there to figure out what the car does. Is it going to understeer or oversteer, entry, middle, exit? What's it going to do? If I'm just driving to that limit, that peak, I'm not going to feel that, additional tiny little, effect. So, we can string together some perfect laps just under the limit, all these time, but I want to figure out where that is. So I'm going to just push, in some areas to find, essentially where the opportunity lies. So, Ken, would love to hear some
Yeah,
more
I mean,
closing thoughts from you as well here.
yeah, this is great. I mean, getting up to speed, it's really it's really all there. And again, if you focus on some of these singular things that you pointed out, this is just how you do it. It's not complicated, but
Mhm.
obviously having the discipline to do this
Mhm.
is tough. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I do want to ask you one last question though. I
Yeah.
haven't asked you this question, but this will be good. When you're on track, like what, I know we've got obviously a gazillion things that we're working on.
Mhm.
How high a priority are apexes for you? Like in your thinking of what you're doing on
Mhm.
track, like how high a priority are apexes?
I would say, obviously they're incredibly high, but at the same time, I've also, had some tracks where all of a sudden there's just grip offline a little bit, and I see guys running in front of me, like, 3 feet off the apex, and they're still, carrying some good speed, still getting on throttle at the right point. I think having the framework for how we want to approach a corner from, your entry exit slow point perspective for me has been much more beneficial in terms of building the bigger picture. And apexes just happen to be a part of that and getting us to that point. And obviously, tracks like VIR on my laps here, on iRacing, for example, if I was off my apex by, an inch, it was infinitely harder to get my corner done and completed. So for me, I don't want to say it's more situational as far as priority scale goes, but for me, if I'm driving a corner to my entry, driving an entry corner in super hard, super deep, maybe I'll lose half a tenth if I'm, a foot off my apex as opposed to I'm on my apex, but I'm just under driving that perspective. I'm driving it like an exit corner in the first place. But I don't know if that's
No,
that's
I
a
think that's
perfect
good.
description, but
No,
I
I think
do,
that's good.
yeah.
I think, I mean, for me, they're probably the number one reference, and I think
Hmm.
it's in a lot of it is honestly from the coaching perspective, because when I look at people with apexes, it
Hmm.
tells me trajectories, it tells me what the control they're
Yes,
using,
absolutely.
it tells me where their eyes are at, it tells me
Hmm.
how they've turned in, right? So there's a lot of information. So yeah, for me, it's probably the number one reference, and
Yep.
and on track, I would say it's split between the apex and the slow point, because
Yeah. Hmm.
they do go together.
And,
And
and I'll
yeah,
agree 100% on references, by the way, because yes, that is going to be my focal point in terms of how I build that, slow point or my entry or exit perspective, with that apex. So,
yeah, well, it's
absolutely.
funny because so like Ollie's just talking about one of the
Hmm.
fastest drivers I know is kind of wild. He misses turn-ins and apexes, but is amazing at rolling speed. Well,
Hmm.
here's the thing, Ollie, that's not sustainable.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yes. Hmm.
at some point, so if he's carrying more steering wheel angle or more slip, right, his tires aren't going to they're just not going to last as long. So at some point you'll have him there, and he's also way more prone to mistake.
Hmm.
So yeah, your point, yeah, he flies off the track a lot too. Yeah, not sustainable. So yeah, that's part of going. We want to go faster, of course, but we want to do
Hmm.
it in a manner that is safe and allows us to have a process to keep going quicker over the time.
Hmm.
And so I mean, your guy that you're talking about is probably just a very emotional driver. And yeah, emotion, I'm not going to let emotion be my technique. I'll let emotion guide me to my technique, but I'm not gonna let emotion be my technique. So anyway, yeah,
100%.
that's all I got, Colin. I think I think this is just a great topic.
Awesome. Yeah, super appreciate it. Super appreciate it, Ken. You know, always a pleasure
Super
doing
fun.
these, and yeah, Ollie as well. You know, let us know how we can help and get me. Yeah, happy to be in touch for the Laguna weekend coming up for you too. We can hop on and figure some stuff out. But yeah, this is awesome. Definitely fun jumping back into the swing of these two. So I will plan on that for sure. I'll have to double
Great.
check that. Shouldn't be racing anything on mine or traveling that weekend, so should be all good there. But yeah, thanks again, guys.
All right. Thanks,
Always a
everyone.
pleasure.
Great, thanks,
All right.
Tom.
Awesome. Enjoy the
All
rest
right.
of the
See
week.
ya.